At 8:43 on a Thursday night, Elaine Walker's daughter sent her a message from upstairs. "Mom, please do not react yet, but you need to see Dad's post." Elaine was sitting alone at the kitchen table, still wearing the same soft gray sweater she had worn while clearing dinner plates and wiping down the counters. The dishwasher was humming beside her. The house was quiet in that tired, ordinary way a house gets after everyone has eaten. Homework has been checked, and one more long day has almost made it to the end. Richard was supposed to be at a late vendor meeting. That was what he had told her. He had kissed the air near her cheek before leaving, picked up his laptop bag, and said not to wait up because the meeting might run past 9. Elaine had believed him. Or maybe, by then, she had simply gotten used to acting like she believed him. She opened Facebook with the slow dread of a woman who already knows the bad news is waiting for her, but still hopes she is wrong. She was not wrong. There he was. Her husband, Richard Walker, smiling at a rooftop bar downtown with Vanessa Reed from his office. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. His face was turned toward the camera with that relaxed, polished smile he had learned to use in company photos. Vanessa was beside him, close enough to look claimed. His hand rested low on her back, not on her shoulder, not in some harmless group photo way, but in a place no honest man would later explain as professional. The caption was worse than the picture. Some people spend years holding you back. Then one person reminds you what freedom feels like. Elaine read it once, then again, then a third time, because sometimes the mind needs a moment to accept that cruelty can be typed so neatly. Below the post, Vanessa had commented, "You deserve a life that finally matches you." People had liked it. Richard's friends had liked it. His co-workers had liked it. Men who had eaten Elaine's food at summer cookouts had liked it. Women from his office, women who had smiled at Elaine at Christmas parties, had put little hearts under the photo, like they were blessing something brave. One man had written, "About time you chose yourself." Elaine stared at those words for a long time. Chose yourself. That was what they were calling it now. Not lying. Not humiliating your wife. Not letting your 15-year-old daughter discover her father's affair on social media before her mother even had the dignity of a conversation. Chose yourself. Elaine sat in that kitchen and watched 26 years of marriage get buried in public, one like at a time. She did not call Richard. She did not send a shaking paragraph asking how he could do this. She did not throw her phone against the wall, or march upstairs, or cry loud enough for Lily to hear. She had begged for respect in small ways for years. She was not going to beg for it from a man who had just sold it for applause. So she did something quieter. She took screenshots. The post, the photo, the caption, Vanessa's comment, the coworker's comment, the time, the location tag, every visible reaction. Then Elaine set the phone flat on the table and looked at the wedding ring on her hand. For a few seconds, it seemed heavier than it had ever been. Not because the marriage still had weight, but because she finally understood how long she had been carrying it alone. Richard had not made a mistake. He had made an announcement. So Elaine answered him in the only language he had chosen. Publicly. She left one comment. Then let's make your freedom legal. And before I tell you how fast that one sentence changed his life, subscribe if you believe betrayal hurts more when they make it public. Elaine Walker had been married to Richard for 26 years before she saw that post. 26 years is a long time to love someone. It is an even longer time to keep explaining them. After that many years, the sacrifices stop looking like sacrifices. They become normal. They become part of the walls, part of the schedule, part of the warm food on the table and the clean towels in the closet, and the bills that somehow get paid before anyone has to ask how. People stop noticing the hands that hold a life together. They just enjoy the life. When Elaine first met Richard, he was nothing like the man grinning beside Vanessa on that rooftop. He was not polished. He was not expensive. He was not the kind of man who spoke in captions about freedom and ambition. He was a nervous sales associate with one decent suit, a used sedan, and the habit of checking his bank balance before ordering anything more than a sandwich. He had ambition. That much was clear. But he did not have confidence yet. He wanted a better life. but he was still afraid of the cost of wanting one. He could talk about goals, then get quiet when the bill came. He could dream about promotions, then panic before a meeting. He could imagine himself as a successful man, but he still needed someone to remind him that he was allowed to try. Elaine never laughed at that. She respected it. She was 36 then, and she already had the kind of practicality life gives to women who have learned not to expect rescue. She knew how to stretch a paycheck without making it feel like poverty. She knew which bill could wait until Friday and which one absolutely could not. She knew how to make a small apartment feel like a home, with clean floors, cheap curtains, and something warm on the stove. Richard used to look at her like she was the safest place he had ever found. One night, early in their marriage, he told her, "You make me feel like I can become something." Elaine believed him. More than that, she believed in him. And that is where a loyal woman can lose years of her life without noticing. She hears need and thinks it is love. She hears gratitude and thinks it will last. She starts building a man up, little by little, and she forgets to ask whether he will still recognize her when he is finally standing higher. After they married, life did not become easy. It became organized. Elaine took a part-time job at the school library so she could be close to their daughter, Lily. She packed lunches in the early morning and checked homework at night. She paid the bills, handled the taxes, remembered birthdays, scheduled dentist appointments, mailed insurance forms, and kept a mental list of everything Richard forgot the moment he walked out the door. When Richard had business trips, Elaine drove him to the airport before sunrise and made sure his presentation notes were in the front pocket of his bag. When his mother broke her hip, Elaine was the one who changed sheets, tracked medication, sat through follow-up appointments, and kept Richard updated between his sales calls. At first, he thanked her. Then he got used to it. That is a quiet kind of heartbreak. Not the kind that makes a scene. The kind that happens when someone slowly stops seeing your effort because it has become too convenient for them. Gratitude disappears fast when a man starts believing your labor is just part of the weather. As Richard moved up, Elaine kept the background of his life clean. She stayed up late fixing slides for his presentations because he hated formatting and always waited until the last minute. She picked out ties before client dinners. She reminded him to schedule his physical when his blood pressure started creeping up. 7. She ironed the shirts he later wore in rooms where he spoke like he had built himself alone. For a while, Elaine told herself his success was their success. That was marriage, wasn't it? One person steps forward while the other holds the floor steady. One person takes the applause while the other makes sure the lights stay on. She did not resent him for rising. She was proud of him. That was the sad part. She was proud of a man who was slowly learning to be ashamed of her. It did not happen all at once. Richard's tone shifted first. Small things, little remarks, the kind a wife can forgive if she wants peace badly enough. You're too practical, Elaine. You don't understand how corporate life works. Coupons and mortgage payments. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one still growing. Elaine heard those words and softened them before they could cut too deep. She told herself he was tired. He was under pressure. He was middle-aged and trying to prove he still had value in rooms full of younger, louder men. So she gave him grace. Then she gave him more. And then, because that is how these things happen, grace became the place Richard went to avoid accountability. The cruel part was that Richard did not change overnight. He changed slowly enough for Elaine to keep explaining it away. The first thing he became obsessed with was image. Not health, not improvement, not becoming a better husband or father. Image. He bought a watch that cost more than their first month's rent as newlyweds. When Elaine raised an eyebrow at the price, he called it an investment piece. Then came the tailored jackets, the Italian shoes, the expensive haircut, the kind of cologne that stayed in a room long after he left, as if even his absence needed to announce itself. He told Elaine he had to look the part now. Men at his level were judged before they opened their mouths, he said. Elaine wanted to be supportive, so she nodded. She had spent years helping him walk into important rooms. She did not yet understand that he was beginning to feel embarrassed by the woman who had helped him get there. Then his social media changed. Richard had never cared much about posting before. He used to forget birthdays online. He barely knew how to crop a photo. But suddenly he was everywhere. Conference photos, restaurant tables, hotel lobbies, company dinners, smiling beside people Elaine barely knew. His captions started sounding like they belonged to a man auditioning for a life he had not earned honestly. Growth requires courage. Ambition has a cost. Freedom begins when you stop apologizing for wanting more. Elaine noticed Vanessa Reed in the background before she noticed her at the center. At first, Vanessa was just another coworker in group pictures. A marketing woman with glossy hair, sharp dresses, and a smile that always seemed ready for a camera. She looked younger than Elaine, but more than that, she looked practiced. The kind of woman who knew exactly where the lens was, even when pretending not to. Then Vanessa started appearing more often. A tag here, a comment there, a little flame emoji under one of Richard's photos. A joke about how impossible he was to keep up with. Nothing big enough to accuse. Just enough to make Elaine's stomach tighten. One night, while folding towels in the bedroom, Elaine asked, "Who is Vanessa?" Richard did not even look up from his phone. "A coworker, Elaine. Not every woman in my life is a threat." It was a clean sentence. Quick, cruel, and designed to make Elaine feel foolish for asking. That was Richard's gift, by then. He did not answer concerns. He rearranged them until Elaine looked like the problem. After that, the late nights became normal. Client dinners, strategy sessions, team offsites, urgent presentation prep. Networking drinks that somehow ended after midnight. When Elaine asked why his shirt smelled like perfume, he smiled in that patient, insulting way people use when they want to sound reasonable while calling you stupid. "It is a restaurant, Elaine. People wear perfume." When she asked why Vanessa commented on nearly every post, he said Elaine was insecure. When she asked why he had started sleeping with his phone face down, he said she was controlling. When she asked why he barely made it home for dinner anymore, he told her she had no idea what real pressure looked like outside their little house. Little house. That one stayed with her, because that little house had carried him. The mortgage had been paid on time. The refrigerator had been full. The lights had stayed on. Their daughter had been cared for. His shirts had been clean. His mother had been helped. His life had been held together inside that little house, while Richard chased bigger rooms and better tables. But men like Richard do not always hate stability. Sometimes they only hate the person who reminds them they needed it. One Friday, Elaine found a receipt in the pocket of his blazer. 2 dinners, 2 cocktails, 1 dessert, $243 at a downtown restaurant Richard had claimed was for a client meeting. That same night, Vanessa posted a public story from that same restaurant. Richard was not in the photo. Not clearly. Just 2 glasses, a small candle, the corner of a man's sleeve. But Elaine recognized the sleeve because she had washed that jacket the week before. Still, it was not enough. Not enough to prove. Not enough to confront. Not enough to stop Richard from turning her pain into paranoia. And Richard knew it. He was living comfortably in the space between suspicion and proof. Elaine might have kept doubting herself for months longer if he had not become careless enough to humiliate her in front of everyone. After Lily sent that message, Elaine did not move for almost a full minute. Then she opened Richard's post again and studied it the way a person studies a wound after the first shock fades. Slowly. Carefully. Almost clinically. The rooftop bar was tagged downtown. The timestamp said 8:17 p. Richard had texted her at 7:54, saying the vendor meeting was running late and he would probably grab something from the office break room. There was no vendor meeting. There was no break room. There was only her husband, smiling beside another woman, while pretending his wife was something he had survived. Elaine did not touch Richard's phone. She did not try to guess his password. She did not open private accounts, read private messages, or do anything illegal. That mattered. She looked only at what Richard and Vanessa had chosen to make public, and what already belonged to the marriage. She saved his post first, then Vanessa's comment. Then the coworker's comment congratulating him for choosing himself. She saved the location tag, the date, the time, and every visible reaction. Then she went backward. Vanessa's public stories showed the same rooftop bar from different angles. One photo showed 2 drinks and the edge of Richard's silver watch near the table. Elaine knew that watch. She had bought it for his 50th birthday, back when she still believed gifts could say what tired marriages had forgotten how to say out loud. An older conference photo from Chicago showed Vanessa standing beside Richard near a hotel lobby fireplace. Richard had told Elaine that trip was senior staff only. Vanessa was not senior staff. Another post showed a steakhouse in Dallas on a Tuesday night. Richard had texted Elaine that evening, saying his team was trapped in the office finishing a proposal. In Vanessa's photo, the dark window behind the table caught half of Richard's face. Just half. But half was enough. Then Elaine found the comment that changed the temperature of the room. Under one of Vanessa's older photos, Richard had written, "Some people make you remember who you were before life got small." Life. Not work. Not stress. Not business. Life. Elaine sat back from the laptop and finally saw the shape of it. Richard was not only having an affair, he was writing a story. In his version, he was the trapped man. Vanessa was the open door, and Elaine was the small, ordinary life he had outgrown. For one ugly second, Elaine wanted to call him and make him hear what he had done. She wanted to ask how he could stand on 26 years of her labor and then call it small. She wanted to ask when her loyalty became a cage. She wanted to ask if he remembered the airport rides, the unpaid bills she quietly solved, the nights she stayed awake while he slept, like a man with nothing to worry about. But then, she looked into the living room. Lily had fallen asleep on the sofa with a school notebook open across her chest. 15 years old. Old enough to understand shame. Still young enough to need one parent to stay steady. Elaine put the phone down. If she screamed, Richard would call her unstable. If she begged, he would call her weak. If she confronted him too soon, he would have time to delete, explain, twist, deny, and perform innocence. So Elaine did the one thing Richard never expected from the woman he thought he had already made small. She stayed quiet. She opened her laptop, created a new folder, and named it Richard Documentation. Then she placed every screenshot inside it. By the next morning, Elaine had stopped trying to understand Richard's feelings. That sounds cold, but it was not cold. It was survival. Feelings could be staged. Feelings could be dressed up in captions about freedom and growth. Feelings could be used later as excuses, polished until they almost sounded like reasons. Richard had become very good at that. He could make selfishness sound like courage. He could make neglect sound like pressure. He could make another woman sound like a symptom of a marriage he had already decided to blame on his wife. But Paper was different. Paper did not care if Richard looked sad when he told his side. Paper did not care how carefully he chose his words. Paper did not get charmed by a man who wanted to look misunderstood. At 9:15 that morning, Elaine sat across from a divorce attorney named Marcia Bennett. Marcia was 58, with silver hair cut just above her shoulders, and the kind of calm face people only get after they've seen the same disaster arrive in 100 different outfits. She did not gasp when Elaine told her about the Facebook post. She did not shake her head for effect. She did not say, "I cannot believe he did that," the way friends sometimes say it, when they want to be kind but do not know what else to offer. Marcia simply listened. Elaine told her about the rooftop bar, Vanessa's comment, the older photos, the dinner receipt. The way Richard had learned to turn every reasonable question into proof that Elaine was insecure, controlling, or too small to understand his life. Marcia wrote everything down on the yellow legal pad, not dramatically, not emotionally, precisely. When Elaine finished, Marcia set her pen down and looked at her for a long moment. Then she said, "Do not confront him. Do not threaten him. Do not touch anything you are not legally allowed to access. Preserve what you have. From now on, you document." Elaine nodded. Her throat felt tight, but her hands were steady on her lap. Marcia continued, "According to the law in this state, the evidence may matter if it shows misuse of marital funds, false financial claims, or conduct that affects custody. Adultery alone is not magic, but money, parenting, and credibility matter. That sentence did something Elaine did not expect. It did not heal her. It did not make the betrayal smaller, but it gave the pain edges. Until that morning. Richard's affair had felt like a wound she could not cover. In Marcia's office, it became something else. A file. A timeline. A record. Something Richard could not charm his way around. Elaine went home and began carefully, cleanly, lawfully. She pulled the joint bank statements first, then the shared credit card records, the mortgage documents, the family calendar, Lily's school emails, Lily's dental appointment reminders, the group messages where Richard had canceled, postponed, forgotten, or handed off responsibilities that he later liked to claim belonged to both parents equally. She did not hack his phone. She did not guess passwords. She did not open private accounts. She did not do anything that would let Richard turn her into the villain. She stayed inside the boundaries of what already belonged to the marriage and the household. And that was enough. That was the part Richard had never understood. A man who lies carelessly often leaves enough truth behind for someone patient to find. The pattern appeared faster than Elaine expected. There were dinner charges on nights Richard claimed he was working late. Rideshare charges from downtown hotels back to the office garage. A weekend hotel reservation sent to the family email by mistake because Richard had used his rewards account, the same one Elaine had booked family trips through for years. That weekend had been their wedding anniversary. Richard had told Elaine he was trapped at an out-of-town vendor meeting and too exhausted to celebrate. Elaine remembered that weekend clearly. She had cooked anyway. Nothing fancy. Just the meal he used to like, before he became the kind of man who needed every table to prove something. She had put his plate in the refrigerator, then thrown it away the next morning without saying a word. Now there was a hotel charge sitting in front of her, quiet and ugly. There were spa gift cards, boutique purchases, airline upgrades, flowers she had never received, furniture delivery to an address Elaine did not recognize. She searched the address. It was a short-term luxury apartment, 2 blocks from Richard's office. Not a hotel, not a business venue. An apartment. The kind of place a man chooses when he is not just sneaking around, but setting something up. When Elaine sent it to Marcia, there was a pause before Marcia called back. Then came the transfer that made even Marcia's voice go colder. The memo line read, V.R. Transition Support. Vanessa Reed. Elaine stared at those 3 words until they stopped looking like letters and started looking like the full shape of Richard's betrayal. Transition support. As if Vanessa was moving into a new chapter, and Richard was the generous man helping her get there. Except he was not using only his money. He was using money from the life Elaine had kept stable for 26 years. Money from the same household where Lily slept, studied, ate dinner, and still believed some parts of her father could be trusted. Richard had not only cheated, he had built a landing pad for the woman he was cheating with. And he had built it on Elaine's back. Marcia requested formal financial discovery. She wanted pay records, bonus records, reimbursement records, business expense reports, and any account Richard had not disclosed. She wanted the clean version of what Richard had tried to scatter in pieces. Richard still thought the problem was embarrassment. That was how small his understanding was. He thought Elaine was angry about a Facebook post. He thought she was hurt because people saw. He thought if he waited long enough, she might calm down, cry, bargain, and eventually accept whatever version of the story made him look least cruel. 3 days later, he texted her. If this turns into divorce, I want 50-50 custody. I'm not paying child support just because you want to punish me. Elaine read the message once. Then she read it again, slower. There it was. Not concern for Lily. Not a question about how this would affect their daughter. Not one sentence about stability, school, therapy, schedules, or what Lily needed. Just money, child support, punishment. Richard had missed Lily's last 2 parent-teacher conferences. He did not know the name of her current math teacher, He had not taken her to a dentist appointment in 3 years. He had once cancelled Lily's birthday dinner because Vanessa's marketing team had a client event, and he said he could not afford to look unavailable. Elaine sent the text to Marcia. Then she sent the custody calendar. The calendar did not yell. It did not insult him. It simply showed the truth in boxes and dates. Who drove Lily to school? Who picked her up? Who signed permission forms? Who handled appointments? Who stayed home when Lily had a fever? Who bought the science project supplies at 9 o'clock at night because Lily forgot until the last minute? Richard's name appeared sometimes, but not enough to match the father he was suddenly pretending to be. Marcia called Elaine that afternoon and said, "We document the difference between being a father in a text message and being a father on a calendar." Elaine sat with that sentence for a long time. That was when she understood what Richard was really doing. He did not want equal parenting. He wanted reduced support. He wanted the appearance of fatherhood without the daily weight of it. He wanted the credit without the routine, the title without the labor, the rights without the responsibility. And for the first time, Elaine did not feel only heartbroken. She felt insulted. A week later, another piece arrived through the quiet channels where people talk when public behavior becomes too loud to ignore. A woman Elaine knew from the school district had a sister who worked in Richard's building. She did not offer gossip with joy. She sounded uncomfortable, even sorry. Vanessa had been telling people she was pregnant. Not privately, not carefully. Enough people had heard it that the story had started moving through the office like smoke. She had said Richard was finally going to have a family that understood him. A family that understood him. Elaine almost laughed when she heard that, but there was no humor in it. Richard had a family. He had a wife who had spent 26 years keeping his life from collapsing under its own weight. He had a daughter who still left space for him at school events, even after he kept choosing work. Then Vanessa. Then himself. But men like Richard often use the word family when they mean audience. That evening, Richard sent Elaine a message that sounded almost rehearsed. "Try not to make this ugly. I have responsibilities coming that you do not understand." Elaine did not answer him. She forwarded the message to Marcia. Marcia's response was simple. "If he brings that pregnancy into custody or support arguments, we ask for documentation. And if necessary, paternity testing." Elaine read that message twice. Then she sat back in her chair and breathed. For the first time since Lily had sent her that Facebook post, Elaine did not feel crushed by Richard's performance. She felt prepared. Richard thought Elaine was still sitting at home, crying over a public humiliation he had mistaken for courage. He had no idea she was already holding the paper trail of the life he had been pretending was freedom. For the next 2 weeks, Elaine lived 2 lives. Inside the house, she was quiet, not soft. Quiet. There is a difference. She made dinner for Lily. She washed coffee mugs. She folded laundry. She answered Richard's questions with short, plain sentences that gave him nothing to grab onto. She did not ask about Vanessa. She did not mention the apartment. She did not bring up the pregnancy rumor. She did not tell him she had hired Marcia Bennett. She let him believe whatever made him careless. That silence worked better than any confrontation could have. Richard mistook calm for defeat. One night, he stood in front of the refrigerator with his tie loosened and his phone in his hand. He had the look of a man trying to sound thoughtful after already doing something selfish. He said, "Maybe we both need freedom." Elaine closed the dishwasher. Then she looked at him. "Maybe we do." Richard smiled faintly, like he had won a gentle agreement from her. Like he had guided his wife into accepting the mature, peaceful end he wanted to sell everyone else later. That was the problem with Richard. He had spent so many years underestimating Elaine that he no longer recognized danger unless it raised its voice. Behind that calm answer, Marcia had already prepared the petition for divorce. Temporary orders. A proposed parenting schedule. Request for financial disclosure. A request to preserve marital assets. A clean, disciplined beginning to the end. Richard had announced online. Then the larger proof arrived. One of the accounts Marcia requested showed a quarterly bonus Richard had told Elaine was delayed. It had not been delayed. It had been paid. Then it had been moved into a secondary account Elaine had never seen before. From there, the money had gone out in pieces. Apartment deposit, furniture rental, medical clinic payment, a designer bag, a weekend hotel stay labeled as business travel. Elaine looked at the numbers until they stopped hurting and started speaking. That was the strange thing about evidence. At first, every charge felt like a slap. Every line item felt personal. Every date reopened something she had already tried to survive. But after a while, the numbers became more than pain. They became language. And what they said was simple. Richard had not lost control. Richard had made plans. That same afternoon, Vanessa posted another public story. No face, no tag. Just her hand resting on her stomach, and a caption that said, "New beginnings do not need everyone's approval." She did not tag Richard. She did not need to. The performance was already built for him. Elaine sent everything to Marcia. That night, Richard came home late and found Elaine sitting at the kitchen table. Not crying, not pacing, not waiting by the door like a woman begging for an explanation. Just sitting there, with a neat stack of printed pages in front of her. The Facebook post, Vanessa's comments, the rooftop location tag, the hotel charges, the apartment payments, the bonus deposit, the transfer marked V.R. transition support. Richard's face changed before he said a word. Not into guilt, into anger. That told Elaine plenty. "What the hell is this?" he said. Elaine folded her hands on the table. "The part of your freedom you forgot to hide." He grabbed the first page and scanned it. His jaw tightened. His eyes moved too fast. A man only reads like that when he already knows what he is looking at. "You had no right to dig through my life." Elaine's voice stayed even. "I did not dig through your life. I followed our money." Richard gave a short, ugly laugh. "So now you are going to punish me because someone finally makes me happy." "No," Elaine said. "I am going to stop paying for it." That landed. She saw it land. His anger shifted then. It lowered, became softer, more controlled. The way some men speak when they realize rage is not working and try to step back into charm. "Vanessa loves me," he said. Elaine looked down at the apartment receipt. Then she looked back at him. "Then she should love you just as much when the court stops you from paying her bills with marital money." For the first time that night, Richard had nothing polished to say. No caption, no speech about growth, no little sermon about freedom. Just silence. The next morning, Richard was served at work. There was no shouting, no confrontation in the lobby. No scene Elaine needed to witness to feel satisfied. Just a process server walking into the office, confirming Richard's name, and handing him an envelope in front of the same kind of people who had liked his brave little freedom post. Vanessa was nearby. So were two members of his sales team. Richard had acted single in public. Now the law had answered him in public. The envelope at the office embarrassed Richard, but Court was different. Court did not care who had liked his post. Court did not care how carefully he dressed, how tired he made himself look, or how gently he lowered his voice when he wanted people to believe he was the reasonable one. Court had dates. Court had numbers. Court had records. And records were the one thing Richard had never respected enough to fear. At the first hearing, Richard walked in wearing his best suit, navy blue, clean lines, polished shoes. The same kind of outfit he wore when he wanted a room to see him as important before he had to prove anything. He looked calm, almost wounded. That had worked for him for years. A steady voice. A sad face. A careful story about a marriage that had been dying long before anyone saw a Facebook post. He knew how to sound disappointed without sounding cruel. He knew how to make betrayal look like a difficult choice made by a man who had simply run out of air. He said Elaine had been controlling. He said she had never supported his growth. He said he had only moved on emotionally after years of loneliness. He said the public post had been misunderstood, taken out of context, exaggerated by a wife who wanted to punish him. He said he wanted equal custody because Lily needed both parents. That one made Elaine's stomach turn. Not because Lily did not need a father. Of course she did. But Richard was not talking like a father. He was talking like a man who had finally learned that parenting time could change a support calculation. He also claimed his income was lower than Elaine believed. The bonus, he said, had not been paid yet. The apartment payments were temporary business expenses. The hotel charges were client hospitality. Vanessa, he carefully suggested, was part of his future now, and he had new responsibilities to consider. It was a polished story. Smooth. Sad. Almost respectable, if you did not have the receipts. Marcia Bennett did not argue with his emotions. That was not her style. She did not raise her voice or turn the room into a performance. She simply opened the file. First came the parenting calendar. Not an emotional speech, just dates. Appointments. School events. Pickups. Drop-offs. Dentist visits. Parent-teacher conferences. Sick days. Messages from the school. Permission slips. Every quiet little duty that makes up the real weight of raising a child. The calendar showed who took Lily to school, who picked her up, who attended conferences, who scheduled medical appointments, who bought supplies, who stayed home when Lily had the flu. Richard's name appeared sometimes, but not nearly enough to match the father he was describing. When Marcia asked him for the name of Lily's current math teacher, Richard gave the name from the year before. It was not a loud moment. No one gasped. No one needed to. Elaine did not smile. She did not look proud. She only lowered her eyes to her hands. Because there are some victories that still hurt when they prove what you already knew. Then came the money. Marcia presented the hotel charges first, then the apartment deposit, then the furniture payments, the spa gifts, the ride shares. The transfer marked V. R. Transition support. Richard sat very still. Then Marcia presented the bonus record. The same bonus Richard said had not been paid. It had been paid. It had been moved. It had been spent. The room changed after that. It was not dramatic. It was worse than dramatic. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that arrives when a person's carefully built version of events starts losing support under its own weight. When Richard said he could not afford the child support calculation, Marcia placed the apartment payment in front of him. When he said the relationship had not affected family finances, Marcia showed the anniversary weekend hotel charge. When he said his custody request was about Lily, Marcia showed the missed appointments, the canceled birthday dinner, and the message where he had called childcare arrangements Elaine's department. Elaine remembered that message. She had read it months earlier while standing in a grocery store aisle, holding a pack of Lily's favorite cereal, feeling tired in that deep way women feel tired when they are carrying both the marriage and the proof that they are carrying it. At the time, it had hurt. In court, it became useful. That was the strange justice of documentation. The things that once made Elaine feel alone began speaking for her. Richard's story did not collapse all at once. It weakened line by line. That is usually how dishonest stories die. Not in one explosion. Not with a dramatic confession. They die under the pressure of dates, numbers, contradictions, and the small ordinary facts people forget to hide. Then the pregnancy issue came up. Richard's attorney tried to bring it in carefully. My voice softens here, just enough to suggest that Richard had future obligations, future family responsibilities, and a complicated financial reality the court should consider. Marcia objected to any unverified claim being used to reduce Elaine's position or Lily's support. Documentation was requested, testing followed, and the result delivered the kind of quiet cruelty that reality sometimes saves for people who think they are smarter than consequences. The baby was not Richard's. Elaine did not celebrate it. There was nothing funny about a child being dragged into adult lies. There was nothing satisfying about watching another woman's pregnancy become part of a legal mess Richard helped create. But the result destroyed the story Richard had tried to use against her. He was not a noble man stepping into a new family. He was not a misunderstood husband with responsibilities Elaine refused to respect. He was a man who had gambled his old life on a fantasy that had already started lying back to him. After that, the consequences came in ordinary language. No thunder. No movie ending. Just orders, calculations, revisions, and signatures. The hidden bonus was added to the marital estate. A portion of the money Richard had spent on Vanessa was credited back in the financial division. Child support was calculated using Richard's real income, not the smaller version he preferred. His request for 50-50 custody was narrowed into a schedule that reflected the parenting he had actually done, not the parenting he described when money was at stake. Elaine received primary custody with a clear parenting plan. Not because she punished him, because she had records. That was the part Richard could not twist. He could argue about feelings. He could rewrite the marriage. He could claim loneliness, pressure, confusion, and personal growth. But he could not talk his way around a calendar. Richard's company opened an internal review of his expense reports. Quietly, of course. Companies do not always make noise when they clean up embarrassment. They close doors. They ask questions. They remove names from projects. They stop inviting certain people into certain rooms. The promotion Richard had been chasing disappeared without ceremony. Vanessa was moved off his accounts. Not long after, she left the company. Maybe by choice. Maybe not. Elaine never asked. She did not need every ending explained to her anymore. The people who had once liked Richard's Freedom Post became careful around him. That was another lesson Elaine learned. Public admiration has a short memory when paperwork gets involved. The same people who will cheer on a man's brave new life from behind a screen often go silent when the bill for that life shows up in court. The divorce ended fairly. Not magically. Not perfectly. Fairly. And after what Elaine had survived, fair felt almost holy. She did not take everything from Richard. She did not need to. She took back what his lies had tried to drain from her. Stability. Protection for Lily. A financial record that told the truth. And the right to stop funding a man who had mistaken her loyalty for something small. For a while after the divorce, Elaine expected grief to arrive in some dramatic wave. She thought she might wake up one morning and feel the full weight of 26 years missing from the room. But grief came differently. It came when she stopped buying Richard's coffee. It came when she cooked too much pasta because her hands still measured for 3. It came when Lily asked if they could make the house feel different, and Elaine realized her daughter had been waiting for permission to breathe. So they changed small things first. New curtains in the living room, a different chair by the window, fresh paint in the hallway. Nothing expensive, nothing showy. Just enough to make the house stop feeling like a place where Richard might walk in and change the air. The silence changed too. Before, silence had been heavy. It was the silence of waiting for a lie, waiting for a car in the driveway, waiting for the smell of restaurant perfume on a shirt, waiting for Richard to decide whether he would be charming, distant, guilty, or cruel. After the divorce, the silence became honest. It was still quiet. But it no longer asked Elaine to doubt herself. Lily adjusted in pieces. Some days she was angry. Some days she pretended she was fine. Some days she wanted to talk about her father, and other days she could not stand to hear his name. Elaine did not force her into forgiveness. She did not poison her against Richard either. She simply gave her daughter the one thing Richard had made rare in that house: consistency. Dinner at the same time, school forms signed, therapy appointments kept. No adult secrets left lying around for a child to discover online. Elaine went back to the school library full-time at first. It was familiar work, quiet work. Shelves, records, students, schedules. It gave her days a shape when her personal life still felt like a room after a storm. Then one of the district administrators noticed how organized she was, how careful, how steady under pressure. Steady. The word Richard had once treated like an insult became the very thing that opened the next door. Elaine started taking evening courses in educational records management. It was not glamorous. It did not come with applause or rooftop photos. But it was solid. It made sense. It gave her a future that did not depend on smoothing the path for someone else. 2 years after the divorce, Elaine's life looked nothing like the life Richard thought she would be left with. She was not broken. She was building. The full-time library job led to a records management position in the district office. The pay was better. The hours were cleaner. People respected her judgment. They came to her because she knew how to keep things organized, how to find what mattered, how to make sense of details other people overlooked. Elaine was not becoming someone new. She was becoming the woman she had always been before Richard spent years making her feel small for being steady. Lily noticed first. She noticed her mother laughing again, sleeping better, wearing color again, making plans without checking Richard's mood first. That may sound small to people who have never lived with tension, but it is not small. When a home has spent years revolving around one person's moods, peace can feel unfamiliar at first, almost suspicious. Then, slowly, it starts feeling like home. Elaine met Daniel through the district office. He was not flashy. That mattered. He did not walk into rooms trying to prove he belonged there. He did not perform kindness so people would notice. He was patient, quiet, and useful in the ways that actually count when life gets hard. He helped Elaine move boxes into her new office without making a speech about it. He listened when she spoke, and not with that empty waiting look people wear when they are only preparing their own answer. He remembered what she said. He respected her time. He respected her boundaries. And maybe, most importantly, he did not treat Elaine's past like damage. He treated it like evidence. Evidence that she had carried something heavy, survived it, and somehow still remained gentle enough to trust carefully again. Elaine did not rush. She had learned the cost of confusing attention with devotion. Daniel seemed to understand that. He never pushed to be more than she was ready for. He never tried to step into Lily's life like a replacement. He did not speak badly about Richard just to earn points. He let time do what words cannot. Most importantly, Lily liked him. Not right away. A teenage girl does not hand out trust just because her mother smiles at someone. At first, Lily was polite, careful, watchful in the way children become watchful after adults disappoint them publicly. Daniel did not take it personally. He remembered her debate schedule. He fixed the loose handle on her bedroom door after Elaine mentioned it once in passing. He asked about her classes and actually listened to the answers. When Lily talked about college ideas, he did not lecture. He asked questions. Slowly, Lily stopped calling him your friend Daniel. She started calling him Daniel. That was enough. For Elaine, it was more than enough. She did not need a man to rescue her. She had already done the hardest parts herself. But there was something quietly healing about being helped without being made to feel indebted. Being respected without having to earn it through exhaustion. Being loved by someone who did not confuse her stability with something boring. Richard heard about the promotion through someone at the district. He heard about Daniel later. That was when regret finally found him. Not the clean kind of regret that arrives with accountability. Not at first. More like loneliness with a familiar name. He had wanted freedom when freedom looked like rooftop bars, soft lighting, younger admiration, and a woman who called him extraordinary. He had not imagined freedom would look like a smaller apartment, strained visits with his daughter, a damaged reputation, and evenings where no one was waiting to make the house feel warm. He called Elaine one evening. She almost did not answer. Then she did. Not because she owed him softness, but because his voice no longer had power over her. He sounded older. I made the worst mistake of my life, he said. I thought freedom would feel bigger than this. Elaine looked across the room. Lily was laughing with Daniel over something small and ordinary. A cup of tea had gone cold on the table. There were papers from Elaine's office stacked beside a grocery list. Nothing glamorous. Nothing worth posting. Just a life. A real one. Elaine listened to the silence on Richard's end of the line and felt something she had not expected. Not anger. not pity. Distance. The kind of distance that tells you the wound has finally become a scar. Then she said, "You did get freedom, Richard. You just didn't understand what you were giving up to get it." He asked if they could meet. Elaine said no. No explanation. No apology for protecting her peace. No extra words for him to hold, twist, or misunderstand. Just no. Because she no longer needed his apology to feel whole. She no longer needed him to admit what he had done in the perfect words. She no longer needed him to suffer loudly enough for her pain to feel justified. The court had done what the court could do. Time had done the rest. Stability is not small. Loyalty is not weakness. And a woman who rebuilds in peace is not waiting for the man who destroyed the house to come back and admire the repairs. Richard had acted single in front of everyone. Elaine had only made it legal. And when he finally understood the difference between being free and being alone, she was already living a life he could no longer enter. If this story reminded you that truth has a way of finding the light, subscribe for more stories about betrayal, divorce, custody battles, and the moments people finally take their power back.